The mysterious disappearances on cruise ships. Picture this. You're standing on the deck of a massive cruise ship, the sun setting over endless blue waters, music drifting from the promenade, laughter echoing through the corridors. You're surrounded by thousands of fellow passengers, hundreds of crew members, security cameras monitoring nearly every corner of this floating city. You feel safe, protected. Nothing could possibly go wrong. But here's a statistic that will shatter that illusion. Over the past 2 decades, approximately 400 people have gone missing from cruise ships. That's roughly 19 to 25 people every single year who board a vessel expecting the vacation of their dreams and simply vanish without a trace. Their families are left with nothing but questions, their belongings boxed up or discarded, their final moments lost somewhere between the vast ocean and the carefully managed image of the cruise industry. These aren't just numbers on a chart. These are mothers and fathers, newlyweds on their honeymoons, young crew members starting their careers at sea. Each disappearance represents a life interrupted, a family devastated, and often a mystery that may never be solved. When paradise becomes a nightmare. The cruise industry is a marvel of modern tourism. These floating resorts carry millions of passengers each year to exotic destinations, offering everything from world-class dining to Broadway-caliber entertainment. The ships themselves are engineering wonders, some carrying more than 6,000 passengers and crew, equipped with state-of-the-art navigation systems and safety protocols. Yet beneath this veneer of luxury and security lies a darker reality that the industry would prefer remained hidden in the depths of the ocean. Cruise ship disappearances, while statistically rare compared to the millions who sail each year, generate intense intrigue among travelers, true crime enthusiasts, and anyone who has ever felt the gentle sway of a ship at sea and wondered, what if? The rarity of these events is precisely what makes them so unsettling. When someone disappears from a cruise ship, they vanish from what should be a controlled environment. Unlike getting lost in a foreign city or wandering away from a resort, disappearing from a cruise ship means vanishing from a finite space surrounded by nothing but ocean. There are security cameras, key card systems that track every door you open, crew members assigned to check your cabin, and thousands of potential witnesses. So how does someone simply cease to exist? The problem: a perfect storm of factors. The central challenge in understanding cruise ship disappearances lies in untangling a complex web of factors that range from tragic accidents to potential criminal activity. The ocean is an unforgiving environment, and cruise ships, despite their size and sophistication, operate in a unique legal and jurisdictional gray zone. Consider the layers of complexity. The jurisdictional maze. Most major cruise ships are registered in countries like the Bahamas, Panama, or Liberia under what's known as flags of convenience. This means that when something happens on board, the investigation falls to authorities who may be thousands of miles away, have limited resources, or lack experience in complex criminal investigations. When Rebecca Coriam disappeared from the Disney Wonder in March 2011, only one Bahamian detective was assigned to investigate, and he spent just 1 day aboard the ship, interviewing only 6 of the 950 crew members and 0 of the 2,000-plus passengers. The evidence problem. Unlike crimes committed on land, evidence on a cruise ship is inherently temporary. Ships must maintain their schedules, docking at ports, and continuing their voyages. Surveillance footage might be erased every 2 to 3 weeks. Cabins must be prepared for new passengers, and potential witnesses disembark at various ports and scatter to their home countries. By the time families realize their loved one is missing and authorities begin investigating, days or weeks may have passed, and crucial evidence has literally sailed away. The vastness of the ocean. When someone goes overboard, the chances of recovery are devastatingly slim. The ocean is not a still pond, but a dynamic environment with currents, tides, and marine life. Bodies that enter the water may never surface, or they may drift hundreds of miles from where they went in. Search and rescue operations face massive challenges in determining where to look and how long to search. The alcohol factor. Several investigations have revealed that alcohol is being served indiscriminately on cruise ships, contributing to injuries, violence, and disappearances. Intoxicated passengers may make poor decisions, engage in risky behavior, or become vulnerable to accidents or foul play. Inadequate safety measures. Despite industry regulations, questions remain about whether cruise lines implement sufficient safety protocols. Are railings high enough? Are there enough crew members monitoring passenger areas? Are security personnel properly trained to respond to emergencies? Are surveillance systems comprehensive enough to cover all potential danger zones? Underreporting and cover-ups. Perhaps most troubling is the evidence that some cruise lines have failed to report disappearances promptly or have actively worked to downplay incidents. Before the Cruise Vessel Security and Safety Act was passed in 2010, there were no official statistics on cruise ship disappearances, and some cruise lines may ignore the law and omit disappeared passengers from their quarterly reports to the FBI even today. The challenge facing investigators, families, and the public is that any combination of these factors can contribute to a disappearance. Was it an accident? A suicide? A crime? Natural causes followed by fall overboard? The truth often remains as murky as the ocean depths. Case studies. When people vanish at sea. To truly understand the mystery and tragedy of cruise ship disappearances, we must look at specific cases. These aren't abstract statistics, but real people whose lives were cut short or transformed forever by their time at sea. The tragedy of Merrian Carver. August 2004. 40-year-old Merrian Carver, a divorced mother and former investment banker with a passion for poetry, boarded the Celebrity Mercury for a 7-day cruise from Seattle to Alaska. She didn't tell her family about the trip, which wasn't unusual for Merrian, an independent spirit who sometimes took solo vacations to clear her head. On her first night aboard, her cabin steward, Domingo Montero, found her personable and relaxed, looking forward to the cruise. She mentioned she didn't want to visit the dining room, so he brought her sandwiches at her request. That was the last confirmed sighting of Merrian Carver alive. The next morning, Montero discovered her bed hadn't been slept in, with a generous tip and a manila envelope with unknown contents left behind, along with all her belongings, including her only shoes. He did exactly what he should have done. He reported her missing. And then something shocking happened. Or rather, nothing happened. Montero reported Merrian missing daily for 5 days to his supervisor, who told him to just do your job and forget it. The cruise continued its scheduled ports in Alaska and British Columbia. Merrian's cabin remained untouched, her belongings sitting exactly where she'd left them. When the cruise ended and the ship docked in Vancouver on September 3rd, the crew simply boxed up her possessions, gave most of her clothes to charity, and locked up her purse. They notified no one. Not the police. Not Merrian's family. Not even the passengers who might have seen something. Merrian's family reported her missing on September 7th, 4 days after the cruise ended and 10 days after she'd last been seen. They hadn't even known she'd gone on a cruise. When her father, Kendall Carver, a former insurance company executive, contacted Royal Caribbean, it took them 3 days to confirm his daughter had even been on the ship, 26 days after she disappeared. What followed was a nightmare of obfuscation and delay. The cruise line claimed it was normal for passengers to abandon their belongings and normal for them to change rooms without notice. They initially told the Carver family that surveillance footage was kept for only 2 to 3 days, making it impossible to review what had happened. This was a lie. Footage was kept for 30 days, which meant it should have still existed when the family first contacted the cruise line. When Kendall Carver, refusing to let his daughter's disappearance be swept under the rug, filed lawsuits and forced depositions, the truth emerged. In a deposition, Montero testified that he had indeed reported Merrian missing daily, asking his boss whether they should report it, and being told, "I'll take care of it. Just put all of her belongings in a bag." Internal memos showed the cruise line trying to determine whether Montero had spoken to anyone about the disappearance, suggesting an active effort to contain information. Royal Caribbean eventually issued a statement claiming that Merrian had severe emotional problems, had attempted suicide before, and appears to have committed suicide on our ship. The Carver family, who knew Merrian as a vivacious and independent woman, rejected this conclusion. Without a body, without a proper investigation, and with crucial evidence destroyed or lost, they would never know what truly happened to Merrian during those early morning hours on August 28, 2004. But Kendall Carver refused to let his daughter's disappearance be in vain. He founded the International Cruise Victims Organization and spent 5 years lobbying Congress. His efforts, along with those of other families who had lost loved ones at sea, led to the passage of the Cruise Vessel Security and Safety Act in 2010, requiring cruise lines to report crimes and disappearances to the FBI, maintain better security measures, and preserve evidence. Kendall Carver passed away in 2019, never knowing what happened to his daughter. The manila envelope she left behind, along with the tip she'd left for Montero, disappeared along with her cabin steward, who was never located again. The honeymoon that ended in blood. July 5, 2005, should have been just another glorious day of George Allen Smith IV's honeymoon. The 26-year-old from Greenwich, Connecticut, had married his bride, Jennifer Hagel, just weeks earlier in Newport, Rhode Island. The couple boarded the Royal Caribbean ship Brilliance of the Seas for a 12-day Mediterranean cruise, celebrating their new life together. But that night, George Smith would vanish, leaving behind a scene so disturbing that it would spark congressional hearings, FBI investigations, and questions that remain unanswered 2 decades later. The evening of July 4th had been one of celebration and excess. George and Jennifer, along with other passengers they'd met, spent hours drinking and socializing. By the early morning hours of July 5th, Jennifer was reportedly found unconscious near a stairwell, so intoxicated that crew members had to help her back to her cabin. But George didn't return with her. Instead, he continued partying with 4 men he'd met that night. Those 4 men, later identified as Josh Askin and Russian brothers Greg and Zach Rosenberg, were the last people known to have seen George Smith alive. What happened next remains one of the most controversial aspects of the case. An ear witness in a nearby cabin heard a disturbance on George's balcony that night. When crew members entered the Smith cabin the next morning after reports of a missing passenger, they found a scene that belied the cruise line's initial explanation of an accidental fall. 2 small lines of George's blood were found on the bed sheets. The room was messy, but not trashed. A balcony chair had been found with its back against the railing. But the most damning evidence was visible from outside the ship. A massive bloodstain covering an awning several decks below the Smith's balcony. The cruise ship's captain quickly concluded it was an accident, that George, drunk and disoriented, had simply fallen overboard. But George's family and later investigators weren't convinced. The blood evidence suggested something far more sinister than a simple fall. One of the 4 men last seen with George was later recorded mocking him, saying, "We gave that guy a paragliding lesson without a parachute." Despite extensive FBI investigations, interviews with the men who were with George that night, and years of media coverage, no one has ever been charged with any crime related to George Smith's disappearance. In 2006, Jennifer Hagel Smith accepted a settlement of $1.1 million from Royal Caribbean, though George's family later challenged both the terms and the amount. In 2015, the FBI closed its investigation, stating there was not enough evidence to prove George had been murdered and that his death may have been an accident. Jennifer Hagel Smith, who was heavily criticized by some for her conduct on the night of the disappearance and her later decisions, remarried in 2009 and has maintained that she believes her first husband's death was a tragic accident caused by intoxication. She has largely stepped away from public life, building a new family while the shadow of that night continues to follow her. George Smith's body was never recovered. The waters between Greece and Turkey, where he disappeared, hold their secrets still. But his case changed the cruise industry, contributing to the push for greater oversight and the passage of the Cruise Passenger Protection Act, which gives the federal government more authority to protect cruise ship passengers and makes crime-related information public. Rebecca Coriam. The Disney Mystery. The Disney brand is synonymous with magic, family entertainment, and meticulous attention to detail. Disney Cruise Line, launched in 1998, brought that same philosophy to the seas, offering families a premium vacation experience aboard ships designed to capture Disney's legendary hospitality and theming. It was precisely this reputation that made what happened on March 22, 2011, so shocking. Rebecca Coriam, known as Bex to her friends, was a 24-year-old from Chester, England, who embodied enthusiasm and warmth. After earning a degree in childhood studies and gaining work experience in the service industry, she landed a job as a children's activity coordinator for Disney Cruise Lines in the summer of 2010. By all accounts, she loved her work, the travel, and the unique community of crew members who lived and worked together aboard the massive ships. In March 2011, Rebecca was serving aboard the Disney Wonder, sailing from Los Angeles to Puerto Vallarta along the Mexican Riviera. On March 21st, she sent what would be her last message to her parents via Facebook, telling them she would call them the next day. She never made that call. The last confirmed sighting of Rebecca was captured on CCTV at 5:45 a.m. on March 22nd in the crew lounge. The footage shows her on an internal phone call, appearing distressed and wearing what appeared to be oversized men's clothing that may not have been her own. After hanging up the phone, another crew member approached her and asked if she was all right. Rebecca replied, "Yeah, fine." Then she walked away and was never seen again. When Rebecca failed to report for her 9 a.m. shift, Disney staff initiated a search of the ship. They found nothing. The cruise line contacted multiple authorities including the U.S. Coast Guard, the FBI, the Bahamas Maritime Authority, the Royal Bahamas Police Force, and the Mexican Navy. But because the ship was registered in the Bahamas, jurisdiction fell to that country's police force. What followed was what many would characterize as a shockingly inadequate investigation. The Royal Bahamas Police Force sent one detective, Superintendent Paul Rawl, who was flown to Los Angeles via Disney's private jet, and spent just one day aboard the Wonder when it returned to port. During that single day, he interviewed 6 of the 950 crew members and none of the 2,000-plus passengers. Disney's official explanation was that Rebecca had been swept overboard by a rogue wave while at the crew pool on Deck 5, a theory supported, they claimed, by a pair of sandals found near the pool. The company even held a memorial ceremony at the alleged site, laying flowers while the ship prepared for its next cruise with passengers already aboard. But this explanation crumbled under scrutiny. Private investigator John Anderson, hired by the Coriam family, checked sea conditions and water temperatures at the time and found them to be completely normal, noting that a rogue wave would have caused additional damage to the ship. The CCTV footage showed Rebecca on Deck 1, not Deck 5 where Disney claimed she was swept away. The sandals Disney presented as evidence were later proven not to be Rebecca's. Perhaps most disturbing were the reports from crew members who spoke to journalists after the incident. One crew member, speaking to Guardian journalist John Ronson, who booked the same cruise route to investigate, suggested that all areas Rebecca walked through were covered by CCTV cameras requiring keycard access, and that Disney likely had far more footage than they'd revealed. Multiple crew members suggested the company suppressed evidence to protect its brand. In the months following Rebecca's disappearance, strange events added to the mystery. Her bank reported that someone tried to access one of her accounts on April 19th, and the password to her Facebook account was changed in September. On the day before the first anniversary of her disappearance, Rebecca's father received an email from a woman claiming to be 85% sure she'd seen Rebecca with a dark-haired man on the street in Venice, Italy, the previous August. The Coriam family hired private investigators, enlisted the support of British MPs, and fought Disney for years for answers. British parliamentarian Chris Matheson, who believes Rebecca may have been murdered, told the Liverpool Echo, "My worst fear is that Rebecca Coriam was murdered. It's a possibility, and it needs to be investigated properly. The more you look into this, the more it smells rotten, the more it smells like a crime has taken place." In 2016, Disney settled a civil claim with the Coriam family out of court for an undisclosed amount. The company has never wavered from its official position that Rebecca was swept overboard by a rogue wave, though they've never explained the contradictions in their evidence or why the investigation was so limited. To this day, Rebecca's whereabouts remain unknown, and her case continues to haunt those who ask. In an environment as monitored and controlled as a Disney cruise ship, how could someone simply vanish? Amy Lynn Bradley. The face that won't be forgotten. Of all the cruise ship disappearance cases, perhaps none has generated as much speculation, reported sightings, and enduring mystery as that of Amy Lynn Bradley. Her case represents the nightmare scenario that keeps families awake at night. What if their loved one didn't die, but was taken, held against their will, unable to come home? March 21st, 1998. 23-year-old Amy Lynn Bradley, a recent graduate of Longwood University, boarded the Royal Caribbean ship Rhapsody of the Seas with her parents, Ron and Iva, and her younger brother, Brad. The cruise was meant to be a celebration, a family vacation to the Caribbean before Amy started her new job at a computer consulting firm. Ron Bradley had won the all-expenses-paid cruise through his employer. Amy was described by her family and friends as athletic, intelligent, and vivacious. She had worked as a lifeguard and was a strong swimmer. She had recently come out as gay to her family, and while her parents weren't initially happy about it, they loved her unconditionally. She was looking forward to the future, planning her career, and had just signed a lease on a new apartment. On the evening of March 23rd, Amy and her brother Brad attended the ship's late-night disco, dancing and socializing with other passengers and crew. Video footage later recovered from the ship showed Amy dancing with a bass player in the ship's band, Alastair Douglas, who went by the nickname Yellow due to his dyed hair. Brad left the disco around 3:30 a.m., leaving Amy alone. Amy's key card was swiped to enter their family cabin at 3:40 a.m., but there's no evidence showing when she left. At approximately 5:30 a.m., Ron Bradley woke up and saw Amy sleeping on the balcony in a chair. He went back to sleep. 30 minutes later, around 6 a.m., he woke again to find the balcony door ajar, Amy gone, and her shirt from the night before draped over a lounge chair inside the cabin. Her cigarettes and lighter were missing. The family immediately reported Amy missing, but they encountered frustrating delays from the ship's crew. The team at the purser's office told them it was too early to make a ship-wide announcement, waiting until 7:50 a.m., after most passengers had already disembarked for the ship's port stop in Curaçao. Between 12:15 p.m. and 1 p.m., the crew staff searched the ship but could not find Amy. What happened next turned a potential accident or disappearance into something far more disturbing. That same morning in Curaçao, a local taxi driver approached the Bradley family, claiming he'd seen a young woman matching Amy's description, specifically noting her distinctive green eyes, frantically searching for a phone in a parking area while the ship was docking. His claims were never corroborated, but they were the first of many reported sightings. In August 1998, 4 months after Amy's disappearance, 2 Canadian divers told authorities they had seen a woman they believed to be Amy on a popular Curaçao beach with what appeared to be 2 men escorting her. In a Netflix documentary about her case, witness David Carmichael describes seeing a woman with a Tasmanian devil tattoo, the same distinctive tattoo Amy had, on a beach in Curaçao. The woman looked like she was about to say something to him, but kept walking with 2 men, one of whom Carmichael believed might have been Alastair Douglas, the band member Amy had been dancing with. More disturbing still was the account of Navy veteran Bill Hefner, who claimed in the documentary that he met a woman in a bar in Curaçao who said her name was Amy Bradley. According to Hefner, she told him she had hopped off a cruise ship to score drugs and was now being held against her will. Over the years, there have been multiple reported sightings of Amy in various locations throughout the Caribbean and beyond. Some witnesses claim to have seen her in brothels or with handlers who appeared to be controlling her movements. IP addresses traced to Barbados have shown someone routinely logging into forums related to Amy's disappearance on key anniversaries and birthdays, leading some to believe it might be Amy herself. The FBI has investigated Amy's disappearance for over 27 years. A reward of up to $25,000 is available for information leading to the resolution of her case. Alastair Douglas was questioned extensively by the FBI and underwent a polygraph test that was inconclusive, but no evidence was found to charge him. He has maintained his innocence, though his own daughter has expressed doubts about his involvement. In 2025, a Netflix documentary series titled Amy Bradley is Missing brought renewed attention to the case. The show's release brought in hundreds of new leads to the FBI and the Bradley family, with 3 very significant revelations being investigated, including reports from a female bar server from the cruise ship who allegedly corroborates that Amy was trafficked off the boat. Amy's family has never believed she accidentally fell overboard or took her own life. They point to her swimming skills, her plans for the future, and the numerous reported sightings as evidence that she survived her disappearance and may have been a victim of human trafficking. They maintain hope that she is still alive and can be found. In 2010, 12 years to the day after her disappearance, a court officially declared Amy Lynn Bradley dead, though investigators have never recovered any physical remains. Her case remains open, and her family continues their tireless search for answers. The most baffling mystery. If we're forced to identify the single most mysterious and shocking disappearance in cruise ship history, Amy Lynn Bradley's case stands alone for its combination of disturbing elements, unresolved questions, and the possibility, however slim, that the victim might still be alive. What makes Amy's disappearance the pinnacle of cruise ship mysteries? The timing. Amy vanished during a 30-minute window while her father slept from a balcony of a cabin she shared with her family. This wasn't a person who wandered off during a port stop or disappeared during a night of heavy drinking. She was last seen by her father, sleeping peacefully at 5:30 a.m. and gone by 6 a.m. The sightings. Unlike most disappearance cases where victims are never seen again, Amy's case involves multiple witnesses who claim to have seen her in the years after she vanished. These aren't vague descriptions, but specific accounts from people who noted her distinctive tattoos, her appearance, and in some cases, her apparent distress. While none of these sightings have been confirmed, they're numerous enough and detailed enough to raise questions. The human trafficking theory. The possibility that Amy was abducted and sold into forced prostitution transforms this from a tragedy into an ongoing crime. If the witnesses who claim to have seen her being controlled by handlers are accurate, then Amy's disappearance wasn't the end of her story, but the beginning of a nightmare that may have lasted years or may continue still. The band member. The video footage of Amy dancing with Alastair Douglas, his proximity to the family's cabin, and witness accounts that he may have been seen with Amy after her disappearance create a compelling narrative thread. While Douglas has never been charged and maintains his innocence, the questions surrounding his involvement have never been satisfactorily answered. The family's determination. The Bradley family has never given up. For more than 27 years, they have maintained a website, worked with private investigators, cooperated with multiple documentaries, and followed every lead. Their unwavering belief that Amy is alive and their tireless efforts to find her add a layer of hope and heartbreak to the mystery. The recent developments. The emergence of 3 very significant new leads in 2025 following the Netflix documentary, including testimony from a cruise ship bar server allegedly corroborating the trafficking theory, suggests the case may not be as cold as previously believed. These developments keep Amy's story alive and maintain the possibility that after nearly 3 decades, answers might finally emerge. Standing on a cruise ship deck today, looking out at the vast expanse of ocean, Amy Bradley's case forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. In an age of GPS tracking, facial recognition, and ubiquitous surveillance, how can someone vanish so completely? If Amy was trafficked, how did it happen? Who was involved? How many people on that ship knew something and said nothing? The cruise industry has made significant improvements since 1998. Security cameras are more comprehensive. Procedures for reporting missing passengers are clearer. International cooperation on maritime crimes has improved. But Amy Bradley is still missing, and her family is still searching. That reality, more than any statistic or regulation, captures the enduring mystery of cruise ship disappearances. The allure and the aftermath. The mysteries of cruise ship disappearances continue to captivate us because they occur in a space that should be safe, monitored, and controlled. These massive vessels, carrying thousands of people and equipped with modern technology, should theoretically be places where people don't just vanish. Yet they do. We've explored the sobering reality that approximately 400 people have disappeared from cruise ships over the past 2 decades, each case representing a unique tragedy and often an unsolved mystery. We've examined the complex factors that contribute to these disappearances: jurisdictional challenges, evidence preservation problems, the vastness of the ocean, alcohol-related incidents, and in some cases, active efforts by cruise lines to downplay or cover up what happened. Through specific case studies, we've seen the human faces behind these statistics. Merrian Carver, whose disappearance was ignored by crew members for days and covered up by the cruise line, leading her father to spend the rest of his life fighting for cruise ship safety reforms. George Smith IV, whose honeymoon ended with blood on an awning and questions that remain unanswered 2 decades later. Rebecca Coriam, who vanished from a Disney cruise ship in circumstances that strained the company's official explanation. And Amy Lynn Bradley, whose disappearance may involve human trafficking and whose family believes she could still be alive. These cases have had profound impacts on maritime safety. In 2013, the Cruise Lines International Association introduced a cruise industry passenger bill of rights that codifies passenger protections and extends beyond long-standing practices. The Cruise Vessel Security and Safety Act requires cruise lines to report crimes and disappearances, preserve evidence, maintain medical personnel and rape kits on board, and install more comprehensive surveillance systems. Yet even with these improvements, people continue to disappear. Recent cases include Kevin McGrath, who went missing from the Carnival Conquest in December 2023, reminding us that these tragedies are not relegated to the past, but continue to affect families today. The allure of these mysteries lies not in morbid fascination, but in the fundamental questions they raise about safety, accountability, and justice. When you board a cruise ship, you trust that the cruise line will protect you, that authorities will investigate if something goes wrong, and that truth will prevail over corporate interests. These cases demonstrate that such trust is not always warranted. The aftermath of these disappearances extends far beyond the immediate loss. Families spend decades searching for answers, spending life savings on private investigators and legal fees. They become advocates for reform, turning their grief into action to protect others. They live with uncertainty, never knowing whether their loved ones suffered, whether they're still alive somewhere, or whether justice will ever be served. The ocean keeps its secrets, but the families of those who have vanished refuse to let their loved ones be forgotten. Their persistence has led to meaningful reforms, but as recent disappearances show, more work remains to be done. Join the conversation. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think happened in these mysterious cases? Do you believe Amy Lynn Bradley was trafficked, or did something else happen during those crucial 30 minutes when she vanished? Was George Smith IV's death truly an accident, or was it, as some suggest, a robbery gone fatally wrong? What really happened to Rebecca Coriam on that Disney cruise ship? Could the rogue wave explanation possibly be true, or is there a darker truth that's been covered up? And what about Merrian Carver? Why was her disappearance so thoroughly ignored and covered up by the cruise line? Beyond these specific cases, what's your take on cruise ship safety in general? Have you ever felt unsafe on a cruise ship? Do you think the current regulations go far enough, or should there be more stringent requirements for how cruise lines handle disappearances and crimes? Should there be international standards that supersede flags of convenience? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Share your theories, your own experiences on cruise ships, or your opinions on what needs to change in the industry. If you found this deep dive into cruise ship mysteries compelling, I encourage you to check out related content about maritime mysteries, unsolved disappearances, and the ongoing efforts to improve cruise ship safety. Consider supporting organizations like the International Cruise Victims Association, founded by Lynn Carver, which continues to advocate for passenger safety and rights. Remember, Every one of these disappearances represents a real person with family and friends who love them and are searching for answers. By keeping these stories alive, by demanding accountability from the cruise industry, and by supporting reforms that protect passengers, we honor the memories of those who vanished and help ensure that future tragedies might be prevented. The ocean may be vast and unforgiving, but the search for truth doesn't have to end. Keep asking questions, keep demanding answers, and never forget that behind every statistic is a human story that deserves to be told. This narrated investigation is based on documented cases and real events. The disappearances of Amy Lynn Bradley, George Smith IV, Rebecca Coriam, and Merrian Carver remain unsolved or disputed. If you have information about any missing person case, please contact the appropriate authorities or the FBI.